everybody. So, today we're going to learn about food and its constituents. In this video, we'll be learning about only one constituent of the food. Okay, so first let's start with what food is and what are the kinds of nutrients present in the food. So food is one of the basic necessity of all living organisms. Because we get food, that's why we are able to survive and our body is able to function and do all the work, like energy, which gives energy to work, play, okay, and do all these, perform all these functions, growing, reproduction, and living a healthy life, obviously. So it gives us energy to work and play, resistance against diseases, and act as a organic material for growth and repair of tissues. So the food is able to do all this. So what is the special things which are present in the food which have the power to do all this? So these are the constituents of the food or the components of the food. So the food contains certain components which perform all these activities, which allow the body and gives energy to the body to perform all these functions. So the components of food are also called nutrients. So we are familiar with the word nutrients, right? So these nutrients are required in adequate amount for our body to grow, to reproduce, and have a healthy life. So it protects us from diseases also. So nutrients are of two types, macronutrients and micronutrients. So when it comes to macronutrients, these constitute the majority of an individual's diet. So they are used by our body in a large amount. Obviously, when a certain thing is used by the body in large amounts, we have to consume it in large amounts. Then only the body get it in large amounts and it can use it for a healthy maintenance of the body. So these constitute majority of the individual's diet and they are used in a large amount by the body. So these macronutrients which are required in large amounts include the carbohydrates, proteins, fats, macro minerals, and water. We'll learn about these nutrients in the further video. Okay, then comes the micronutrients. When it comes to micronutrients, these are required by our body in very small amounts. Unlike these macronutrients, the micronutrients, the word itself says micro, that means small or tiny. So these are required in a very small amount. Okay, so these include vitamins and trace minerals. So the main function of vitamins is to protect the body against our diseases. Okay, so these are required in small amounts, vitamins and trace minerals. So first, when we have to discuss these constituents, components, or whatever you call it, constituents, components, or nutrients of the food, these three mean the same. First, let's discuss about the carbohydrates. Okay, so when we come to carbohydrates, so these carbohydrates are mainly uh, required by the body for energy. So these are energy giving foods. The food which we take should contain carbohydrates for the body to produce energy. So these are compounds of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygens. So what are carbohydrates and what are they made of? The answer for this is carbohydrates are made of the combination of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Anything which contains these three is called a carbohydrate: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Remember this. Okay, and then when these carbohydrates must be consumed in only desired quantities. Okay, whatever, how much ever is required by the body, that much should be consumed. 1 gram of carbohydrate yields 16.8 kilojoule, which is 4 kilocalorie of energy. So when carbohydrates are consumed in a required amount or a desired amount or how much ever the body requires, so it is a good thing and it is utilized by your body in a good way. When carbohydrates are consumed in more quantity than a required one, excess, which is excess consumption of carbohydrates, leads to deposition of fat. So this unutilized, that is, which is not used by the body, this carbohydrates, the excess carbohydrates which is consumed cannot be used because the required amount of energy for the body is taken. Some are left unused because that is not needed. So the unutilized or excess energy is stored in the body in the form of fats by the process called lipogenesis. So this unutilized is turned into fat and it is stored in the body, and this process is called lipogenesis. So that's why we shouldn't consume excess amount of carbohydrates. So we have seen people struggling with obesity, and they are going to gym, go for yoga or exercise to reduce all these fats because the unutilized carbohydrates have deposited over there as fats. So they are struggling to lose it. When they work out or do excess work, then only it is utilized again, because while working or while doing a lot of work, we require energy. So this fat again is converted to provide energy for the body, and that's why the fat is reduced when people go for gym or go for workout. So that's how the technique goes on. So the cells receive carbohydrates in the blood in the form of glucose. So have you ever seen a person who faints off and people first say, let's give glucose to him, glucose water, provide glucose water. So um, usually when we consume carbohydrates, it has to get into the body and it has to be converted into glucose, and obviously this takes a long time. Okay, so that's why the person who is out of energy is directly given glucose so that it works fast. Immediately the energy is given and the person is um conscious again, and he has the energy to get up. So that's why glucose, it is the carbohydrates in the is converted to glucose, which provides energy for the cells and our body to function. So next, when some common sources of carbohydrates are rice, wheat, maize, potatoes, banana, mangoes, and many other foods contain carbohydrates. So the main carbohydrate in the food are in the form of starch and sugars. As I said, the food which we eat contains carbohydrates in the form of starch and sugar. When we consume these starch and sugars, it gets broken down and it is converted to glucose, and in the bloodstream it is provided to all the cells, it is distributed to all the cells. So it takes a long time for this starch and sugars to be converted to glucose. That's why directly a glucose water are given to a person who faints off or require energy, a person who requires energy. So the main carbohydrates in food are in the form of starch and sugars. So the daily requirements of carbohydrates for an adult, a normal adult, requires 500 grams of carbohydrates in a day. But while a growing child, a nursing mother, or a sports person require a higher quantity than the normal. Obviously, these growing children, the sports person work a lot and they are not steady. Like they work a lot, they require a lot of energy. All this takes place. So they require a higher quantity of carbohydrates for them to take in, or for them to produce more energy than a normal person. So this is our first constituent of the component of the food. So in the further next video we'll learn about other constituents or the components of the food. Thank you.